Empress Jathara stood at the massive window of her palace, watching three small shapes dart across the courtyard below. Smoke rose from the garden where her babies had just been playing. Again. She rubbed her temples with two of her four hands while the other two gripped the window frame. This was getting ridiculous. In her 1,000 years of ruling the Galactic Empire, she had faced rebellions, economic collapses, and even a war with dimension-hopping parasites. But nothing had prepared her for motherhood. Specifically, motherhood to three dragon hatchlings who seemed determined to give everyone in the palace a nervous breakdown. Behind her, she heard the familiar sound of claws clicking on marble. Her chief advisor, a beetle-like creature named Krell, approached cautiously. Very cautiously. Everyone moved carefully around the palace these days. Your Majesty, Krell's voice was tight with stress. The Vrelian nanny has resigned. That makes 15 this month. The Empress closed her eyes. What happened this time? She lasted 6 minutes. The medical team says she kept mumbling about darkness and hunger and the end of all things. They've given her sedatives. Krell shuffled his feet. The dragons were just trying to play with her. That was the problem. Ember, Smoke, and Ash were just babies. They wanted attention and affection like any children. But dragon hatchlings came with a special gift that made childcare nearly impossible. They projected fear. Not regular fear like being scared of spiders or heights. This was pure, primal terror that reached into your brain and made you believe the universe was ending. The Empress had some natural resistance because she was their mother. But even she felt the edges of it when all three got excited at once. For everyone else, it was unbearable. She walked back to her desk where a stack of resignation letters sat. Nannies from 17 different species. The toughest warriors in the galaxy. Professional caregivers who had raised the younglings of every dangerous species imaginable. All of them had fled screaming within hours, sometimes minutes. What about the KRLL soldier we hired last week? She asked, though she already knew the answer from Krell's expression. He made it to the afternoon snack time. Then Smoke sneezed and accidentally activated his fear aura. The soldier was found hiding in a storage closet, crying and calling for his mother. He's requested immediate transfer to the front lines. Said facing enemy fire would be less stressful. The Empress would have laughed if the situation wasn't so desperate. A decorated war veteran preferred combat to babysitting. That really said something about her children. She loved her babies. They were curious and playful, always chirping and tumbling over each other. Ember loved shiny things and would collect bits of metal in careful piles. Smoke enjoyed music and would sway his head when anyone hummed. Ash was shy but loved being read to, even though he couldn't understand the words yet. They were perfect, and everyone was terrified of them. The council has made another suggestion, Krell said carefully. Too carefully. The Empress felt her spine stiffen. Let me guess. Cryogenic suspension again? They believe it would be best for everyone. Put the hatchlings into stasis until they mature enough to control their abilities. It would only be a few decades. No. The word came out sharp and final. I will not freeze my children like cargo. They're babies, Krell. They need love and interaction and someone to teach them. Not a cold box for 50 years. But Your Majesty, the summit? Right. The summit. In 3 days she was supposed to host the most important diplomatic gathering of the decade. Leaders from 40 systems would be arriving. She couldn't exactly greet them while managing 3 dragon toddlers who made grown warriors wet themselves. She needed help. Real help. And she was running out of options. Send out a galaxy-wide recruitment notice, she said finally. Maximum compensation. We'll try one more time. Krell looked doubtful but nodded and scurried away. The Empress sat down heavily in her chair. Through the window she could see her babies playing again. Ember was chasing Ash around a fountain while Smoke tried to catch the water spray in his mouth. They looked so innocent. So happy. A soft chime announced a visitor. Her secretary, a nervous young Thelian, peeked through the door. Your Majesty, the Earth Ambassador has arrived for her appointment. But there's a small complication. The Empress sighed. Of course there was. What kind of complication? Her childcare fell through. She's brought her daughter with her. She apologizes profusely and asks if. Just send them in, the Empress said tiredly. One more problem couldn't possibly make this day worse. The doors opened and Ambassador Diane Murphy walked in, looking professionally embarrassed. She wore the standard Earth diplomatic uniform and carried a briefcase in one hand. Her other hand held onto a small human child, barely past the toddler stage. The little girl had dark curly hair pulled into 2 puffy ponytails and wore a bright yellow dress with flowers on it. She clutched a stuffed elephant that had seen better days, one ear hanging by threads. Your Majesty, I sincerely apologize, Diane began. My regular sitter got sick last minute and I had no one else. This is my daughter, Mia. She'll be quiet, I promise. She's very well behaved. As if to prove her mother wrong, Mia pulled free and toddled directly toward the Empress's desk, completely unafraid of the towering alien monarch. She looked up with huge brown eyes full of curiosity. You pretty, Mia announced, pointing at the Empress's ceremonial crown. Sparkly. Despite everything, the Empress felt herself smile. Then she heard it. A distant roar from the courtyard below. The dragons had noticed the new arrival. Mia's head turned toward the sound. Her whole face lit up with excitement. Doggy? She asked hopefully. The Empress looked at the child. Then at the window where her dragons were already racing toward the palace, curious about the new voice. Then back at Mia, who was bouncing on her toes with anticipation. A crazy idea formed in her mind. Desperate and probably foolish. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Ambassador Murphy, the Empress said slowly, how would you feel about a very unusual experiment? Diane Murphy's face went pale. She knew exactly what kind of experiment the Empress was suggesting, and every maternal instinct in her body screamed danger. Your Majesty, with all due respect, absolutely not. Those are dragon hatchlings with psychic abilities that hospitalize trained professionals. My daughter is 2 years old. The Empress understood the fear. She really did. But something about watching little Mia toddle fearlessly around the throne room, completely unbothered by the towering alien monarch or the strange palace, made her think this might actually work. I would never deliberately put a child in danger, the Empress said gently. But consider this. Your species is new to the galactic community. We know very little about human psychology. Perhaps your neural structure is different. Perhaps children process fear differently than adults. Krell, who had returned to the throne room, made a strangled noise. Your Majesty, if something happens to the human child, it could create a massive diplomatic incident. Earth would never forgive us. Mama, what's that noise? Mia had wandered to the window and was pressing her nose against the glass. Below, 3 dragon shapes were getting closer, their wings casting shadows across the courtyard. The sound was getting louder now. A mixture of chirping roars and the scratch of claws on stone. The dragons were excited. They had heard a new voice and wanted to investigate. Palace staff in the hallways were already clearing out, knowing what was coming. Diane grabbed her daughter's hand, pulling her away from the window. We should go. Right now. But the Empress saw something in Mia's expression. The little girl wasn't scared. She was thrilled. Her eyes were huge and bright, and she was bouncing on her toes like it was Christmas morning. Big birds. Mia squealed, pointing at the window where Ember had just landed on the outer ledge, peering in with glowing orange eyes. The temperature in the room dropped. That familiar sensation of creeping dread started to seep in. The Empress felt it. Krell felt it so strongly he backed toward the door. Diane's grip on her briefcase tightened, and her breathing got faster. Ember pressed closer to the window, and the fear aura intensified. It was automatic for the hatchlings, like breathing. They couldn't control it yet. The feeling of wrongness, of impending doom, of everything being terribly, terribly wrong filled the throne room. Diane made a small whimpering sound. Her free hand reached for the wall to steady herself. Mia tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama, I want to see the birds. Please, please, please. The Empress made a decision. Krell, open the window. Your Majesty, this is insane. Open it. Now. The advisor's hands shook as he activated the control. The massive crystal window slid open with a soft hiss. Immediately, Ember hopped inside, followed by Smoke and Ash. 3 baby dragons, each roughly the size of a large dog, tumbled into the throne room with all the grace of puppies on ice. The fear aura exploded outward at full intensity. Krell collapsed against the wall, his breathing rapid and panicked. Diane's knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of a chair, her face gray. Even the guard stationed outside the door stumbled backward, suddenly finding urgent business elsewhere. The Empress gritted her teeth and held steady, using every bit of her maternal bond to resist the psychic assault. And Mia? Mia laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a scared laugh. A genuine, delighted giggle of pure joy. She yanked her hand free from her mother's weakened grip and toddled straight toward the dragons, her stuffed elephant bouncing against her leg. Puppies, she shrieked happily. The 3 dragons froze. They stopped mid-step, their glowing eyes fixed on this tiny creature who was walking toward them without a trace of fear. Their fear projection wavered, confused. This had never happened before. Every living thing ran from them. Every single one. But this little human was rushing forward with her arms outstretched like she wanted a hug. Ember tilted his head so far to the side he almost fell over. Smoke's tail stopped mid-swish. Ash, the most cautious of the three, took a careful step backward, unsure what to make of this situation. Mia reached them and immediately patted Ember on the snout. "Good puppy. You so pretty." Ember's eyes crossed, staring down at the tiny hand on his nose. He made a sound somewhere between a chirp and a confused whine. The Empress couldn't believe what she was seeing. The fear aura was still active. She could feel it pressing against her mind. But Mia seemed completely unaffected. More than unaffected. She seemed to think the dragons were the best thing she'd ever seen. "Mama. Mama, look." Mia called over her shoulder. "Big puppies. Can we keep them?" Diane was still gripping the chair, her face a mixture of terror and absolute confusion. "Mia, sweetheart, those aren't puppies. Those are very dangerous." Smoke, emboldened by Ember's experience, moved closer and sniffed Mia's hair. She giggled at the tickling sensation. "That tickles." She reached up and booped him on the nose too. Smoke jerked back, startled, then made that same confused chirping sound. He looked at Ember as if asking, "What is this thing and why isn't it screaming?" Ash, watching his brothers, crept forward slowly. He was always the shyest one. He stretched his neck out cautiously and Mia gently patted his head. "Soft," she cooed. "You a good boy too." Something incredible happened. Ash began to purr. The sound was deep and rumbling, shaking the floor slightly. Then Ember started purring. Then Smoke. Within seconds all three dragons were crowding around Mia, making sounds that were almost like laughter, their earlier confusion transforming into delighted fascination. Krell had managed to stand up, though he kept his distance. "This is impossible. The fear aura is still active. I can feel it. How is she not affected?" The Empress moved closer, studying the scene carefully. An idea was forming. Human children. Their brains are still developing, correct, Ambassador Murphy? Diane nodded weakly, still processing what she was seeing. "Yes. Neural pathways are still forming until about age 25, but especially in early childhood." "Perhaps," the Empress said thoughtfully, "that's the key. The fear aura works by triggering deep existential dread. It connects to parts of the brain that understand mortality and danger and cosmic horror. But a toddler's brain hasn't developed those connections yet. She literally doesn't have the mental framework to process what they're projecting." Mia had discovered that Ember's scales changed color slightly when you rubbed them. She was now completely absorbed in making rainbow patterns appear on his neck while he sat perfectly still, looking absolutely mesmerized by her. "To her," the Empress continued, "they're just big, interesting animals. Maybe the psychic projection feels like white noise. Or colors. Or music. But not fear. Never fear." Smoke had found Mia's stuffed elephant and was gently mouthing it, careful not to damage it. Mia laughed and tried to tug it back, starting an impromptu game of tug-of-war that the dragon was clearly letting her win. Diane finally found her voice. "Your Majesty, what exactly are you proposing?" The Empress turned to face the human ambassador, and for the first time in weeks, there was hope in her ancient eyes. "I'm proposing the strangest childcare arrangement in galactic history. 3 days. That's all I need. 3 days for the summit. Your daughter stays here, plays with my children, and in return, I will personally guarantee Earth's most favorable trade agreements for the next century." Diane looked at her daughter, who was now attempting to teach 3 baby dragons how to play patty cake. It was chaos. It was bizarre. But Mia was laughing harder than she'd ever laughed before. And somehow, impossibly, the dragons were laughing too. The first full day of the arrangement started at sunrise, and the palace would never be the same. Diane had spent a sleepless night weighing the decision, but watching Mia's pure joy the previous evening had convinced her. Her daughter had made 3 of the most feared creatures in the galaxy purr like oversized kittens. If that wasn't proof of safety, nothing was. Still, she insisted on checking in every 2 hours, and the Empress agreed without hesitation. Mia arrived at the royal nursery carrying her stuffed elephant and a backpack full of snacks. The moment the doors opened, 3 dragon heads popped up from behind a pile of golden cushions, their eyes lighting up with excitement. "Puppies." Mia dropped her backpack and ran toward them, arms wide open. The reunion was enthusiastic. Ember knocked over a priceless vase in his rush to reach her. Smoke's tail swept an entire shelf of ancient artifacts onto the floor. Ash, trying to be gentle, still managed to headbutt Mia hard enough that she sat down hard on her bottom. She laughed so hard she got hiccups. The Empress watched from the doorway with Dr. Ven, the palace's head scientist, a floating jellyfish-like being who bobbed excitedly as he took notes on his holographic tablet. Fascinating, Dr. Ven hummed. The dragons are mirroring her emotional state. When she laughs, their stress hormones drop by 40%. When she shows affection, their fear aura actually decreases in intensity. So she's not just immune, the Empress said quietly. She's therapeutic. More than that, Your Majesty. She's teaching them. Watch. Mia had pulled out her building blocks from the backpack, the kind that stuck together with magnetic edges. She began stacking them into a tower, tongue poking out in concentration. The three dragons gathered around her in a semicircle, watching with laser focus like she was performing brain surgery. Red one, Mia announced, placing a red block. Now blue one. Ember, the boldest, reached out with his claws. They were sharp as razors and designed to tear through metal, but he moved with incredible delicacy. He picked up a blue block, trembling slightly with effort, and tried to place it on top. His depth perception was off. The block tumbled and the tower collapsed. Mia didn't get upset. She just giggled. It's okay. Try again. Ember made a low chirping sound that could only be described as determination. He picked up another block. This time, Smoke tried to help by steadying the tower with his tail. Ash watched carefully, learning from his brother's attempts. The tower fell 3 more times. Each time Mia encouraged them. You almost got it. One more try. When Ember finally managed to place a block successfully, all 3 dragons made triumphant roaring sounds. Mia clapped wildly. Good job. You did it. Dr. Ven's tablet was glowing with data. Remarkable. They're learning patience, delayed gratification, emotional regulation through positive reinforcement. Things that usually take dragon hatchlings years to develop. The morning continued in beautiful chaos. Mia decided to share her snacks, which led to the discovery that dragons absolutely loved applesauce. Ember ate an entire pouch in 2 gulps, got it all over his face, and then sneezed, spraying applesauce across the nursery wall. Mia found this hilarious. Smoke discovered he could make bubbles by breathing gently into Mia's bubble solution. Soon the nursery was filled with floating bubbles, and all 3 dragons were popping them with their noses while Mia cheered them on. Ash, the quietest one, brought Mia a toy from the dragon collection, a golden orb that projected holographic stars. He laid it carefully at her feet, making a soft trilling sound. Mia picked it up, eyes wide with wonder. Pretty? Thank you. She hugged his massive head, and Ash's purring shook the floor so hard that guards 3 rooms away felt it. Lunchtime was an adventure. The kitchen staff had prepared appropriate meals for everyone, but coordination was a challenge. Mia sat at a child-sized table while the dragons sprawled around her. She insisted on teaching them manners, which meant demonstrating how to use a spoon. The dragons did not have hands designed for spoons. Ember held his in his claws like a sword. Smoke somehow got his stuck on his horn. Ash gave up entirely and just licked his bowl clean, which made Mia laugh so hard she nearly fell off her chair. Use spoon like this, Mia demonstrated again very seriously. She was 2 years old trying to teach dragons table etiquette. The absurdity was lost on no one except Mia herself, who treated it as a completely normal tutoring session. By afternoon, the nursery looked like a tornado had hit it. Toys everywhere. Scorch marks on the walls from when Ember got excited and accidentally breathed fire. A puddle in the corner from Smoke's water bowl that he'd knocked over during an enthusiastic game of chase. But it was the happiest mess the palace had ever seen. Mia pulled out a picture book from her backpack. Story time, she announced, settling onto a large cushion. The 3 dragons immediately gathered around her, their massive heads looming over the tiny book. They couldn't read the words, couldn't even understand most of the language, but they were completely entranced. Mia pointed at pictures as she went, making sound effects. And the doggy goes woof woof. Can you say woof? 3 dragons attempted to bark. The sound came out as something between a roar and a cough, with a small puff of flame from Ember. Close enough. Good boys. Mia praised, patting each one on the head. Dr. Ven was practically vibrating with excitement. Your Majesty, do you understand what we're witnessing? She's socializing them. Human infants learn through play and repetition and positive reinforcement. She's applying the same techniques to dragons and it's working. They're not just tolerating her presence. They're bonding with her. She's becoming part of their clutch. The Empress felt tears prickling her ancient eyes. For weeks, she'd watched her babies grow more isolated, more feared, more alone. Every caretaker had run screaming. No one could get close to them. But this little human girl, barely old enough to speak in full sentences, had waltzed into their lives and decided they were friends. Not monsters. Not weapons. Just friends who needed someone to play with. As evening approached, Mia started yawning. She rubbed her eyes with tiny fists. "Sleepy time," she mumbled. The Empress had prepared a small bed in the nursery, separated from the dragons by a safety barrier, just in case. But Mia had other ideas. She curled up right there on the cushion, hugging her stuffed elephant. The three dragons looked at each other, then at her, then back at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Ember lay down on one side of her. Smoke settled on the other. Ash curled up near her feet, his tail wrapping protectively around the whole group. Within minutes, all four of them were asleep, breathing in sync. Three deadly predators and one tiny human child, napping together like it was the most natural thing in the world. The palace staff who had gathered to watch stood in stunned silence. Several were crying. Even Krell, the perpetually nervous advisor, had to wipe his eyes. "She's a miracle," someone whispered. The Empress shook her head gently. "No, she's just a child. A human child who sees the world differently than we do. Who looks at fear and terror and sees only friends waiting to be made." Dr. Venn added softly, "Perhaps that's what makes humans so special. They don't see monsters. They see potential." As the palace dimmed for night, the Empress sat in a chair near the sleeping group, watching over all four of her children. Because that's what Mia had become in just one day. Another daughter. A bridge between species. A little girl who taught dragons how to laugh. And tomorrow there would be more chaos, more joy, and more impossible moments. The galaxy had no idea what they were witnessing. But the Empress knew. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. By day 3, word had spread across the entire galaxy. The palace communication systems were overloaded with requests from news networks, scientists, and curious citizens from 1,000 different worlds. Everyone wanted to know about the human child who had tamed the untamable. Ambassador Diane Murphy found herself conducting diplomatic meetings while fielding constant questions about her daughter. Other ambassadors would start conversations about trade agreements and end them asking if Mia could teach their younglings to be brave too. "It's not bravery," Diane tried to explain to a delegation from the Corvin system. "She's 2. She doesn't understand danger the way we do. To her, they're just big friendly animals." But that explanation didn't satisfy anyone. They'd all seen the security footage that had somehow leaked. Mia teaching dragons to play games. Mia reading them stories. Mia falling asleep surrounded by creatures that could level a city block if they lost control. The summit meetings continued, but everyone's attention was divided. Even during important votes, ambassadors would glance at their devices, checking the live feed from the nursery that the Empress had authorized. It was the most watched channel in galactic history. In the nursery itself, Mia had established a routine that the dragons followed religiously. Morning started with breakfast, which had become increasingly entertaining. The palace kitchen had learned to prepare extra portions because Smoke had figured out how to give Mia puppy dog eyes, and she couldn't resist sharing her pancakes. "Just one bite for you," Mia would say seriously, holding up a piece of pancake. Smoke would take it so gently, despite jaws that could crush steel. Then Ember would look at her hopefully. Then Ash. Before long, Mia's breakfast had been distributed among 3 very satisfied dragons. The head chef, a 6-armed creature named Torvik, watched through the kitchen monitors and laughed. "In 50 years of cooking, I never thought I'd see dragons beg for table scraps like common pets." Mid-morning was learning time. Mia had decided the dragons needed education, so she'd brought her tablet with educational videos. The dragons watched with intense concentration as animated characters taught basic concepts. "A is for apple," the video sang. "Apple," Mia repeated. 3 dragons attempted to say, "apple." It came out as various combinations of growls and chirps, but they were definitely trying. Ember's version sounded like, "Artpole." Close enough for Mia, who clapped enthusiastically. Dr. Venn was documenting everything. They're mimicking human language patterns. Dragons typically don't develop speech until they're 50 years old, if at all. These hatchlings are attempting words after 3 days of exposure. The Empress watched with pride and wonder. Her children were learning faster than she dreamed possible. But there was a problem looming, one she couldn't ignore. The summit was ending tomorrow. Diane would need to return to Earth to file reports and prepare for the next phase of diplomatic relations. And Mia would have to go with her. That afternoon, the Empress decided to broach the subject. She found Diane in the diplomatic wing reviewing documents. "Ambassador Murphy, might we speak privately?" They moved to a quiet terrace overlooking the gardens. In the distance, they could hear Mia's laughter and the playful roars of the dragons. The summit concludes tomorrow, the Empress began carefully, and I realize you'll need to return home. Diane nodded, though her expression was troubled. I've been thinking about that. Your Majesty, I need to be honest. Mia hasn't stopped talking about the dragons. Last night during our video call, she spent 20 minutes telling me about teaching Ash to play hide and seek. She's bonded with them. They've bonded with her as well, the Empress admitted. Perhaps more than I anticipated. Yesterday, when Mia left for her lunch with you, Ember refused to eat. Smoke sat by the door waiting for her return. Ash became so distressed he accidentally scorched an entire training room. Diane rubbed her forehead. So what do we do? I can't leave my daughter here permanently. She needs to go to school, see her grandparents, have a normal life. But I also can't just rip her away from them. She'll be heartbroken. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, thinking. She had ruled an empire for 1,000 years. She'd negotiated with warlords and peacekeepers, with traders and scholars. But this situation required a different kind of wisdom. On Earth, she finally said, when parents separate, they sometimes share custody of their children, correct? Diane blinked in surprise. Yes, but that's for human families. You're suggesting shared custody across species and star systems, the Empress finished. Unconventional, yes. Perhaps insane. But humans seem to specialize in the unconventional. The idea hung in the air between them. Crazy. Unprecedented. Completely illogical by every standard diplomatic measure. And somehow it felt exactly right. How would it work? Diane asked slowly, her diplomatic mind already turning over the logistics. The Empress began to pace, her hands gesturing as she thought aloud. Mia spends alternating months here and on Earth. We install communication systems for daily video calls. My ships can transport her between worlds in comfort and safety. She maintains her human education but also learns about galactic culture. The dragons learn that absence isn't abandonment, that loved ones can leave and return. That's actually teaching them something important, Diane mused. Separation anxiety in children responds to consistent, predictable patterns. If Mia visits regularly on a schedule, they'll learn to trust that she's coming back. And Mia gets an education that no other human child could dream of, the Empress added. Multiple languages, exposure to dozens of species, understanding of cultures across the galaxy. When she grows up, she could be a bridge between our peoples. Diane thought about her daughter. Mia was brave and curious, traits that would serve her well in life. This opportunity was dangerous, yes, but also incredible. How many parents got to give their child the galaxy? There would need to be conditions, Diane said, slipping into negotiation mode. Her safety is paramount. Medical staff trained in human biology available at all times. Regular check-ins. And if at any point Mia wants to stop, we stop. No questions asked. Agreed, the Empress said immediately. And in return, Earth receives priority trading status, full access to our educational databases, and a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Diane's eyes widened. Your Majesty, that's far too generous for childcare services. The Empress smiled, a warm expression that transformed her usually stern face. This isn't payment for childcare, Ambassador Murphy. This is gratitude. Your daughter has given my children something I thought they'd never have. Friendship. Joy. A childhood. How does one put a price on that? They stood together, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that didn't exist on Earth. In the garden below, Mia had convinced the dragons to play a game that looked like a combination of tag and flying lessons, though none of them were old enough to actually fly yet. I need to talk to Mia about it, Diane said finally. She should have a say in this. That evening, Diane sat with her daughter in their guest quarters. Sweetheart, we need to talk about the dragons. Mia's face fell immediately. We going home? But I don't want to leave the puppies. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. What if you could visit them? You'd spend some time here with the dragons and some time at home with Grandma and Grandpa. Back and forth like going to two different houses. Mia's eyes went wide. I can come back? Really, really? Really, really? Every month. Would you like that? Mia launched herself into her mother's arms, squeezing tight. Yes. I can teach them more words. And we can play more games. And I can show them my toys from home. Diane hugged her daughter close, tears in her eyes. Her little girl was growing up in ways she never expected. Not just growing but becoming something special. A friend to dragons. A bridge between worlds. Okay then, Diane whispered. We'll make it work. The next morning the announcement was made officially. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Some called it brilliant, others called it madness. But the decision was final. Mia would become the first child in galactic history to have joint custody between a human family and an alien empress. And 3 baby dragons would learn that sometimes the best friends came in small, fearless packages who smelled like applesauce and brought stories about talking animals. The first goodbye was the hardest. Mia stood in the palace landing bay, her small backpack on her shoulders and her stuffed elephant clutched tight. Behind her, the diplomatic shuttle hummed softly, ready to take her and her mother back to Earth. In front of her, 3 baby dragons sat in a miserable row, their heads hung low. "I come back," Mia said, her voice wobbling. "Promise." "1 month," Mama said. Ember made a low whining sound that echoed through the bay. Smoke's tail dragged on the ground, completely still for the first time in days. Ash had tears actually forming in his large eyes, something Dr. Venn frantically documented because dragon tears were supposedly impossible. The Empress knelt beside her children, speaking in their native tongue, trying to comfort them. But they didn't want comfort. They wanted their friend to stay. Mia walked up to each dragon, giving them careful hugs. "You be good boys. Practice your words. No burning stuff, okay, Ember? And Smoke, share your toys with your brothers. Ash, be brave." Then she did something that made every adult present hold their breath. She kissed each dragon on the nose, right where their scales were softest. "Love you, puppies." 3 dragons made sounds that were heartbreakingly close to crying. The flight back to Earth felt longer than usual. Mia pressed her face against the window, watching the palace shrink into the distance. "Mama," they sad. "I know, baby. But you'll see them again soon. That's what makes this work. You always come back." On Earth, Mia's return caused quite a stir. Her grandparents had seen the news coverage, the viral videos of their granddaughter playing with alien dragons. Her grandmother burst into tears the moment she saw Mia, hugging her so tight that Mia squeaked. "Grandma can't breathe. Sorry. I just missed you so much. And I saw those enormous creatures and nearly had a heart attack." Mia's grandfather, a retired military man who thought he'd seen everything, just shook his head in wonder. "My granddaughter, friends with dragons. Never thought I'd see the day." That first month on Earth, Mia talked about the dragons constantly. At the grocery store, to the mailman, to her grandmother's book club, to random strangers at the park. Everyone heard about Ember, Smoke, and Ash. But the Empress had kept her promise. Every single day at exactly 4 o'clock Earth time, the communication screen in Mia's bedroom would chime. And there would be 3 dragon faces, crowding into view, making excited chirping sounds when they saw her. "Hi, puppies," Mia would squeal, running to the screen. The video calls became legendary. Mia would show them her toys. The dragons would show her what they'd learned that day. Ember demonstrated he could now stack 5 blocks. Smoke had learned to blow smoke rings on command. Ash, still the shyest, had started humming along to the lullabies Mia sang to them through the screen. "I miss you," Mia would say at the end of each call. 3 dragons would press their noses to the screen, leaving smudge marks that the palace staff had given up trying to clean. When the month finally ended, Mia packed her bag with trembling excitement. She brought new storybooks, some pictures she'd drawn, and a bag of chocolate chip cookies because she was convinced dragons would love them. The reunion in the palace was chaotic. The moment Mia stepped off the shuttle, 3 dragons bowled her over in their enthusiasm. Licking, nuzzling, making sounds that were definitely dragon laughter. Mia giggled so hard she got hiccups again, just like that first day. I'm back. Did you miss me?" The scorch marks on the walls from Ember's stress fires answered that question pretty clearly. This pattern continued month after month. And something beautiful happened. The dragons learned patience. They learned that Mia leaving didn't mean forever. They learned to count down the days, to cherish the video calls, to trust in her return. And they grew. Not just physically, though they definitely got bigger. They grew emotionally. Ember became more careful with his fire, learning control because he didn't want to scare Mia. Smoke developed empathy, noticing when his brothers were upset and trying to comfort them the way Mia had taught him. Ash found his courage little by little with each of Mia's visits. Years passed in this rhythm. Back and forth. Earth and palace. Human world and galactic empire. When Mia turned 5, she started teaching the dragons to read. They sat in a circle in the nursery, now significantly expanded to accommodate dragons the size of horses, and she pointed at words in picture books with a teacher's patience. "This word is friend," she explained. "FR and," Ember attempted, his pronunciation getting better. "Good. And this one is together." "Together," Smoke managed. The dragons were speaking now. Broken, accented, but definitely speaking. They knew hundreds of words in human languages, could understand complex instructions, and had even started making jokes. Mostly bad puns, but jokes nonetheless. By age 7, Mia was helping her mother with actual diplomatic work. She'd sit in on meetings with the Empress, translating nuances of dragon behavior that human diplomats missed. She understood both worlds in a way no one else could. The delegation from Proxima is nervous, she whispered to her mother during one meeting. Ash says their scent changed. They're worried about something but too polite to say. Her mother followed up on that observation and discovered a trade concern that could have derailed negotiations. Crisis averted, thanks to a child who'd learned to read dragon body language. The dragons, meanwhile, had become ambassadors themselves. Other species' younglings were brought to meet them, to see that the feared psychic predators could be gentle and kind. The dragons would play carefully with visitors, demonstrating the control they'd learned through years with Mia. When Mia turned 12, something changed. She was in the palace library, studying for her Earth School exams while the dragons lounged nearby. They were massive now, each one large enough to carry a person, though they'd never offered to carry anyone except Mia. Ember lifted his head suddenly. Mia, question. She looked up from her tablet. The dragons usually spoke in shorter sentences. Full questions were still developing. What's up? When you adult, you leave. Forever? Her heart clenched. They'd been thinking about this. Worrying. No. Never forever. I'll always come back. Even when I'm grown up and have a job and maybe kids someday. You're my family. Promise? Ash asked quietly. Promise? You're stuck with me, puppies. You'll probably get tired of me visiting when you're old, grumpy dragons. Smoke snorted smoke rings, the dragon equivalent of a laugh. Never tired of you. At 16, Mia stood in the palace as humanity's youngest official ambassador. She wore professional attire, but her hair was still in those same puffy ponytails from when she was a toddler. Some things didn't change. Behind her stood 3 fully grown imperial dragons. Ember's scales gleamed like molten rubies. Smoke was midnight black with stars seeming to shimmer in his scales. Ash had grown into his silver coloring, looking like living moonlight. They were magnificent. Terrifying to most species. Their psychic presence could still make grown warriors nervous. But when they looked at Mia, they were still those 3 confused hatchlings who'd met a toddler who wasn't afraid. The Galactic Council was in session, and Mia was presenting humanity's proposal for a new educational exchange program. Dozens of species watched. Some skeptical. Some curious. All aware of the unusual relationship that had brought them here. The program would allow younglings from different species to learn together, Mia explained, her voice steady and confident. To grow up understanding each other, not fearing each other. Because fear is learned. But so is friendship. She paused, glancing back at the dragons. They nodded encouragingly. I was 2 years old when I met these dragons. I didn't know I was supposed to be terrified. I just saw 3 beings who needed a friend. And they taught me that the scariest-looking creatures can have the gentlest hearts. That differences aren't barriers. They're opportunities. Ember stepped forward slightly. When he spoke, his voice rumbled through the chamber in perfect, if accented, standard galactic. Mia teach us we not monsters. We not weapons. We beings with hearts and hopes. She give us childhood. Give us love. Give us chance to be more than fear. The chamber was silent. Then slowly applause began. It started with the human delegation, spread to species who'd worked with Mia over the years, and eventually filled the entire council chamber. The proposal passed unanimously. That evening back in the palace, Mia sat in the nursery that wasn't really a nursery anymore. It was more like a commons room now, with furniture scaled for both humans and dragons. We did good today, she said, leaning against Ember's side while Smoke rested his head in her lap and Ash curled protectively around them all. We good team, Smoke agreed. Best team, Ash added. Mia smiled, closing her eyes. She thought about that first day. A scared toddler with a stuffed elephant, walking into a room full of psychic terror. She hadn't known she was supposed to be brave. She just wanted to make friends. And somehow, that simple desire had changed everything. Changed 3 dragons who learned they could be more than fear. Changed a galaxy that learned humans had a gift for seeing past surfaces to the hearts beneath. Changed one little girl into a bridge between worlds. Love you puppies, Mia whispered. 3 dragons hummed contentedly, the sound of safety and home. Love you too, little sister, they chorused. And in that moment, across species and stars, a family rested together, proof that sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not despite our differences, but because of them.